Before the fireworks and parades, before we turned the founding fathers into marble and legend, there was George Wythe. When America's architects needed answers, they turned to him. Jefferson, Monroe, Marshall. He didn't just shape ideas, he shaped the very men who built the country. Wythe believed law wasn't just order, it was principle, bound by conscience, measured by justice, and he held himself to it every day. Then, he was murdered. And the law, his life's work, didn't just fail him, it let his killer walk free. George Wythe didn't care about power, not in the way others did. He was one of the first judges in the United States, one of our first law professors, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and a framer of the Constitution of the United States. He believed the law wasn't just a system, it was a code, a belief, and a promise, and he lived by that principle. But Wythe wasn't born enlightened. Like most wealthy men of his time, he owned enslaved people, but something changed, slowly. Throughout his life, Wythe would free the people he once held in bondage, not in his will, not as a gesture from the grave. He freed them while he was still alive, not completely unheard of, but dangerously radical for a man of his stature in early 1800s Virginia. Wythe then made space for them in a world that tried to shut them out. He taught, he mentored, not out of charity, but because he believed the law had to apply to everyone, not just the privileged few, or it meant nothing at all. This wasn't safe, it wasn't fashionable, and few people approved, but Wythe didn't flinch. John Marshall, America's longest-serving Chief Justice, once said he never forgot what Wythe taught him, that law should bend toward reason, not power. He believed if you lived your life with integrity, the system would stand by you. He would die holding on to that belief, even as it slipped through his hands. When George Wythe moved to Richmond, it wasn't to retire. He had left Williamsburg and the Wythe House back in 1791. He had been appointed a judge in Virginia's High Court of Chancery. His wife had died a few years earlier. Their only child had died long before that. By the time Wythe settled into his final home, he was building a legacy, and he brought his household with him, the one he had shaped over decades in Williamsburg. Lydia Broadnax, 66, ran the home as a free woman, trusted, sharp, unapologetically in charge. Michael Brown was there too, a gifted young black student. Wythe saw promise in him. He was teaching Michael Latin, Greek, and the law, not just to educate him, but to prepare him for a future Wythe wanted to witness. It wasn't a typical household, not for Richmond, not for anywhere. And then, in early 1806, George Sweeney moved in. Sweeney was Wythe's great-nephew. He was named for his celebrated uncle, young, rebellious, a gambler and a crook. Family, technically, but not the kind you build with, the kind you tolerate. Wythe took him in anyway, because Wythe always believed people could change, that if you showed someone a better path, they might walk it. But some people don't want to be helped. They just want what they can take. May 25th, 1806 started like any other morning for Wythe, Michael Brown, and Lydia Broadnax. Coffee, quiet conversation, the rhythm of a house that had built itself on routine, discipline, and trust. By midday, the house had turned chaotic. All three were violently ill. Doctors were called to the home. They weren't sure what was happening yet, but inside the house, everything had already changed. Only one person within the home remained untouched from whatever sickness had taken hold, and he stood silent as the others began to fall. George Wythe died on June 8, 1806, 2 weeks after he drank the coffee, 2 weeks after his household collapsed. Michael Brown, 16 years old and full of promise, had died just days earlier. Wythe had placed Brown in his will, but if Brown were to die before his nephew, Brown's share would go to Sweeney, increasing his portion. Before the end, Wythe told his doctors that he believed that Sweeney had poisoned the coffee. At the same time, Wythe learned Sweeney had forged several checks in his name, including one on May 27th, 2 days after Wythe fell ill. This alerted the authorities and confirmed Wythe's suspicions. It made the betrayal undeniable. He rewrote his will, removing Sweeney entirely. Sweeney was arrested and indicted on charges of murder and forgery. Lydia Broadnax survived the poisoning. She gave a statement, said she saw Sweeney near the coffee, mixing something, throwing something into a fire. She wasn't alone. Other black members of the household came forward too. None of them were allowed to testify. Virginia law at the time barred black witnesses, free or enslaved, from testifying against white defendants in criminal trials. Wythe's dying statement was also ruled inadmissible as simple hearsay. The arsenic found in Sweeney's room? Circumstantial. And the death of Michael Brown? It was never seriously pursued by the courts of Virginia, and Brown's death all but vanished from the courtroom. Without the testimony of key witnesses, circumstantial evidence, and other leads dismissed as hearsay, the case unraveled. Sweeney was convicted of forgery, but even that was eventually overturned. Wythe had spent a lifetime shaping the law, teaching it, refining it, believing in its promise, and in the end, it was the law, faithfully followed, that let his killer go free. Back in Williamsburg, the Wythe House still stands. The floors creak with every step. The rooms where he hosted students, mentored young minds, and began his day are all preserved. And it's hard not to wonder how much of him still lingers here. These are the rooms where Wythe debated liberty, defined justice, and helped teach a young republic how to govern itself. The voices that once filled this place with arguments, ideas, hope are quiet. But the silence doesn't always feel like peace. Wythe believed in the law like it was gospel. He thought it would protect the good, expose the corrupt, elevate the honest, and maybe, eventually, break the chains of bondage. In the end, the law that he dedicated his life to didn't just fail him, it betrayed him, quietly, legally, perfectly.